Okay, I'm creating this video today for our Engineering 1332 class, learning SolidWorks, and this is the spring 2012 semester. And you've already done a bit of homework creating parts, and so we want to get just a little bit more sophisticated in the parts that we create. And so what I'm going to do is demonstrate the creation of this bent sheet metal part, and then ask you to create the part based on what I show you in this video. And so to get started, let me just tell you what this part might be. Looks again like a piece of bent sheet metal with interesting shapes cut out and these fingers that are bent. This might very well be a set of fins that you would attach to an electronic device, where these are cooling fins intended to keep an electronic device from getting too hot, transferring heat from the device that might be in between these two surfaces, transferring that heat out to the air so that the object remains fairly cool. If you're a mechanical and aerospace engineer, you will definitely be learning about fins when you take heat transfer. But what we're interested in now is not the heat transfer part, but the geometry creation of this object. So let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, I'm going to create a new part and say OK. And in this new part file, I do want to set up some options. Under document properties, I am going to be working in millimeter units. My system in my office defaults to inches, and so I'll set that to millimeters. And then I'm going to do a file save as, and I'm going to make this, let's see, we'll put it there, and I'm going to call this fins demo. And I'll save that part. And now I'm ready to get started creating that part. Excuse me. Now, quite often when I start creating a part, I'll start with an extruded boss base, or once we've learned how to use this one, a revolved boss or base. This time, just to be different, I'm going to start with a sketch. I'll click on sketch. My intention is to click on the front plane. And what I want to do is, first of all, make the U shape of that part. And I'm going to do some things very badly. I'm going to create a line that's not vertical, and a line that's not horizontal, and another line that's not vertical with no relationship to each other. I've got my three lines. I want to show you there's some ways to quickly fix things, mistakes that I've made like this. First of all, if I right click on this particular line, there's an option here to make that line vertical, and it has become vertical. And I right click here, and I'll make that one vertical. And I'll right click here and I'll make that one horizontal. Let me zoom out a little bit. And then we have already seen that if we click on a couple of points, I'll click on that point and control click on this point so that I've selected both. I will make them horizontal, and I now have my basic U shape. Now, could I have made these vertical and horizontal when I first started doing my sketch? Absolutely. I just didn't. Now what I want to do is round off these corners, and I'm going to do that within the sketcher. And so I'm going to use this SolidWorks fillet tool for the sketch. I'll click there and click there, and where I click sets the size of my fillets. I click on the two lines. I like both of those fillets. Let's see what I think about the size of them. That's maybe a little bit on the large side, so let's go with 7 millimeters of fillet. I'll change that size, and I'll click on check. And now I have only one size indicator because this one is set to be the same size. And so my geometry is about right. There's some things about it that I don't like right now, but I think I will fix it later when it becomes important to fix it later. Right now this geometry is just floating out here. No, I guess I will fix the one thing that will be important, because I hate to leave this geometry floating. What I would like to have happen is I'd like to have this geometry centered and symmetric about that point. And so I'm going to right click on this line, and this is something we maybe haven't shown you before, and I'm going to select the midpoint of that line. Okay, do you see the midpoint is now selected and highlighted? I'm going to hold down Control and select the center of my coordinate system. And I go to my properties, and I'm going to add a coincident relationship between those 2 points. Let's zoom back out, and I now have that coincident relationship. my part is still in need of some dimensioning, and so let's go to Smart Dimension, and I'm going to dimension from this point to that line to give me a total height on the part, and I want that to be 150 millimeters, which is about 6 inches. We'll zoom to fit, and I'm going to go from line to line and dimension that to be half of that 150, which would be 75 millimeters. Okay, so there's my part, everything, or my sketch. Everything is now black. Now notice, this is not a closed figure. What I'm going to do is do an extrude thin out of this, and SolidWorks will know that I'm going to do an extrude thin. If I wanted to take a little bit more control of the shape, then I might come in and do some things like this, and I'm going to undo these shortly, but add some thickness to it. Now I have a closed figure, and then I could adjust some of these things to make it give me exactly the profile that I want, including putting fillets in this top part of the figure. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to let the extrude thin feature take care of that for me. So I'll accept that, and I'm going to select that line and that line and that line and hit the delete key. Then I'll select that line and this short line. Let's see, I didn't grab the line very well. Let me grab that short line first, because it's a little hard to grab. Grab the short line and delete it, and grab that short line. Not the point, I want the line. And delete it, and zoom to fit. And I'm right back where I am with non-closed geometry. And so I'll finish the sketch. I didn't start this thing in Extrude Boss Base, so all I have is a sketch floating out there. I have nothing selected. If I want to extrude from this sketch, I'll select the sketch, and then I'll click Extrude. Extrude knows that I've got to create a thin feature out of this because of the kind of shape that I have. I want to view this one square on to take a little closer look at how Extrude is going to work. And right now this is extruding in one direction, and let's just play with the extrude. And I'm not really seeing my sketch very well right now. What I want to do is extrude to the inside of my sketch. Now notice there's a one direction here. Let me change to mid-plane. Now we can see the sketch a little better. There's my sketch. Mid-plane, 10 millimeters. 10 millimeters is too big. I'm thinking close. Let's see what a 2 millimeters looks like. 2 millimeters is a bit better, but I'm not going to extrude mid-plane. I want the material to go to the inside of my sketch so that the dimensions that I created represent the outside of the sketch. I'm going to thicken that up just a little bit, maybe 2.5. That looks a little bit better. Now, how long do I want this thing to be? Let's go with about an inch. So let's go with about 25 millimeters. That's a little long, so we're going to go with 20 millimeters. And that creates a part that looks about right, and I will accept that part, and I've created the U-shaped solid. And now if I let's take a look at where my planes are. I've got a front plane that is at the back end of what I would call right now the back end of the part. I don't like that. I'm going to change that later. I've got a top plane down at the very bottom. I've got a right plane. Where is that right plane? That right plane is in the middle, and I intentionally created that when I set the midpoint of my sketch line to match the coordinate system. And that right plane being in the middle is going to be very important in just a little while. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is start creating some of the geometry of the fins. And if we look closely, we can see that there's sort of a notch, and then inside the notch there is that bent finger. So first thing I'm going to do is create the notch. Get a sense of where I am on the part. I'm going to right click on this face and view perpendicular, and that face is going to become my sketching plane to build an extruded cut on. And it brings me into the sketcher. I don't want anything selected. I'm going to sketch a rectangle, and I want the rectangle to attach itself to that line, and I'll just create an arbitrary size shape right now, and then we will do some smart dimensioning. So I would like this. We'll bring that out. I think I'd like that to be about 10 millimeters. I would like this depth to be about 5 millimeters. And I want to zoom in on this section a little bit. And I'd like the distance from this edge to that top edge to be, let's see what 2.5 millimeters looks like. I think I like that. So I've got a depth of 5, a width of 10, and this little finger of 2.5. And so my sketch is fully defined. I should not be able to drag anything around. Everything should be set. I'm going to accept my sketch. I go into the cut extrude. Right now it comes up with a blind depth for the cut. I could do, instead of blind, I could do a through all. That would cut both sides, and I don't really want to do that yet with this cut. And so I'm going to go, let's see what else we could do. We could do up to surface, and I could say extrude up to that surface but don't go into that surface. That would be a little bit weird here. What I really want to do is up to next. So what that, oops, I keep moving my mouse in a funny way. Up to next. What that's going to do is only cut through this one surface. I can preview it if I wish. And if I turn on these options, the preview looks terrible generally. I'll turn off those options and say, you know what, I like that, the look of that cut. I'm going to accept that. And I've just created a feature, okay, which is that cut. Now what I'm going to do is draw on a sketch on the end face right here. This is going to become my sketch plane, and I'm going to create an extruded boss base. Actually, let me view perpendicular first. That'll make that my sketch plane, and we will do an extruded boss base. And I'm in the sketcher. Now, to be able to see that slot that I've already made, I need to turn this into geometry that shows hidden lines. So now I can see the bottom of my slot, because I want to use that slot dimension, and I'm going to go ahead and make it a little more visible by making it solid. I want to use the bottom of that slot as part of my geometry to make this finger. So first thing I'm going to do is just draw a series of lines. I'm going to snap to that corner. I'm going to come out some, and over, and up, and over. Now I would like to snap to that point. It's not allowing me, oh, it is now allowing me to snap to that point, so I'll take it. You know what, I'm not going to take it. I'm just going to click here, and then I'm going to go back to that point right there, and then I'm going to close this figure by clicking on that point. And I've got a closed figure, but this line clearly needs to be vertical. So now that line is vertical. And now what I want to do is put in some of the details that are really necessary. Since this part, sheet metal part, is all the same thickness, then this edge of this finger will be the same thickness as the part, but that needs to be the same thickness of the part as well. And so what I want to do is select that line and this line, and I want to make them equal. Now, because this one was constrained to lie on those two lines, it adjusted this thickness to make them equal. Okay, I'll accept that. The next thing that I want to do is put a fillet into this corner, and that's way too big. So let's look at a 1 millimeter. See what that looks like. That's maybe a little on the small side. We'll see what 2 looks like. 2 looks pretty good. So I'm going to accept that fillet, and let me move the radius out. Oops, hit escape. Now I can move that radius out of the way a little bit. Now I'm going to put another fillet into the part on this surface, and I will accept that. And right now that's a hit escape. That's a 2 millimeter fillet as well. Well, notice I don't have constant thickness throughout this part. What I really want is this fillet, so that I want to set up the fillet so that both fillets are concentric. And so what I'm going to do is select the first fillet, control select the second fillet, and I want to make them concentric. Now it says this is unsolvable, the items conflict, and it's because they both have a dimension. So I'm going to undo out of that. That's happened to me before, and with my select I'm simply going to delete that dimension. So right now this fillet has a floating radius, and now if I select these two and hold down control to select the second one, I should be able to get a concentric, and that's good. And so notice how I maintain uniform thickness throughout the part. That is pretty close to what I want on this thing, although I still have a lot of blue stuff because I need some dimension. So now let's go to Smart Dimension. I'm going to dimension from this line to that line. That'll set the overall height of that fin. And let me see what a 10 looks like. That is pretty close. Let's see what an 8 looks like. That actually brings the curvature of the fin into that part, and that looks a bit more like the part that I had drawn up. And we can actually change this dimension until these straight lines almost go away. Okay, and that would take maybe a special machine to do that. I'm going to set that as a 7 just to make it look a little more interesting. Okay, so we'll make our fins look like that. That's the geometry of the fin, but I haven't set the length yet. So now I'm going to dimension from that line to this tip here, and we're going to call that, I think actually a 20 would look pretty good. It's a fairly long fin. I have everything is now black in my sketch, and that means my sketch is fully defined. And so now we will exit that sketch and accept it. Now right now we're in a Boss Extrude, but I want to see, let's take a look very carefully about where this thing is sitting. And I need to go back to solid to be able to see that a little bit better. So this sketch is sitting out on the edge of, on this face right here, wanting to extrude outward. Well, that's not what I want at all. First of all, I want to change the direction of my extrude and extrude the other direction. But I don't want to start extruding from this face. I actually want to start extruding, let's see, let's bring that in a little more as well. Find a way to make that look good. I don't want to start extruding from where the sketch plane is. I want to start extruding from somewhere within that slot. And to do that, rather than extruding from the sketch plane, I want to offset the sketch plane a little bit. How much do I want to offset the sketch plane? Let's look at about 4 millimeters. But that's the wrong direction. So let's change the direction. And so looking at it from here, then my object would extrude from here. I can make the object fairly narrow if I wish. Okay. And right now my extrusion is 7 millimeters, and let's see, with about a 4 millimeter offset, that actually looks pretty good because I've got then a gap here and a gap there that would be cut out. Now this is very important. I'm not extruding by starting at my sketch plane. I'm starting my extrusion here, and ending it there. I'm not limited to starting it at the sketch plane. That's going to be useful in creating other kinds of geometries. Let's preview it. I like the looks of that fin. I'm going to accept it. And I now have one fin. Okay. Now what I want to do is make multiple copies of that. And I could just draw more and more of them like crazy, but I absolutely don't want to do that. What I want to do is make a pattern, and I want to make a linear pattern in this case. Now, I don't want to just make a linear pattern of the fin, but I also want to make a linear pattern of the notch. And so what I'm going to do is select both of them. This one's already selected. I'm going to do a control and select that one as well. And with them both selected, I'm going to go and click on linear pattern. And I need to choose a direction for the pattern to move. So I just need to pick a line that is, either one of these lines would work, that line would work, this line would not work. I need to tell it which line reveals the direction that the pattern can move. It is defaulted to a 10mm spacing on the pattern and making 11 copies. Now if we take a closer look at this, I want a little bit more spacing on the pattern. Let's see what 12 looks like, because I want some uniformity in the gap and the width of this finger. That looks pretty good. Let's see what 12 would look like. 12 doesn't fit because it moves on into that radius. So let's go with 11 of these, and I will accept it. And let's see, let's zoom out and zoom back in a little bit. See what those look like from various directions. And I like the looks of that. Okay, if I space my pattern out a little bit more, I would get just a little bit wider finger here. So let's say I want to go change that. I right click on the linear pattern, I edit the feature, and let's see what a 13mm extension would look like, or how about a 12.5. Okay, let's say I like that better. We'll try that. Okay, that gives a little bit more meat here. It also stretches down the length a little bit better. So I like that pattern. Now what I would like to do is take that pattern and move it to the other side. Okay, I can do that with a mirroring operation. There's a mirror command right here. But I have to have a plane that would be in the middle of this surface and this surface so that I can do that mirroring. I need to explore where my planes are. My front plane is not a plane that I could use to mirror. My top plane won't work, my right plane won't work. My basic problem is this front plane is touching the very back of the part. So let's view perpendicular to this surface and see where the front plane is. Front plane's at the back of the part. I sure wish that front plane were in the middle of the part. Where did I make the decision to place the front plane at the back of the part? I made that decision when I created my very first extrude. I actually can go fix that now. How? I'll go to this extrude. I will edit the feature. Notice my sketch plane is at the back of the part. I wish my sketch plane were at the middle of the part. How do I fix that? Very easily. I go to midplane. Now, I still have my 20mm part width, but now my sketch plane is at the very middle of the part. I accept that. And now I'll view square onto this surface. And look at where my front plane is now. It's right in the middle of that part. That front plane is now a tool that I can use to mirror the cut and the finger, to mirror the linear pattern. So I'll click on the linear pattern and I'll click on mirror, and it's going to ask me, let's see, I already had a face selected, so let's do this again. Click on the linear pattern, click on mirror. It's going to ask me what plane to use for the mirror. I'm going to click up here and choose front plane, and it mirrors about the front plane, and it's offering to put copies on that other side. That is exactly what I want. And so now I have a lot more fins. Now I've got them on this side of the part. I want them on that side of the part. How can I put them on that side of the part? I can take the mirror, and I can then, let's see, I can take the mirror and I can mirror the mirror. If I have a plane in an appropriate location to mirror about, and look at that right plane. I intentionally created this part with that right plane right in the middle of the part, so I can mirror about the right plane. I need to click in here, selected the right plane. Notice it brings me not only those blue copies, it brings me everything that was involved, the original of the mirror and the final part. I click here, and I have now made that fin part. Now, let's say that I really like this fin size, but I would like to change the overall height of the part. And I can do that by just double clicking here, and I can find out that my part is 150 millimeters. What if I want this part to be 250 millimeters? Notice what, in my opinion, goes wrong with this part. I still only get the 11 fins that I'd created, and I have this unfinned area. What I would really like this part to do when I change the length of this part is put enough fins on the part to pretty much fill the entire part. So let me undo what I just did. Undo is up here. Okay, and so I'm back with my original part, and what I want to do is use an equation, and we've shown you equations already, but I want to use an equation to relate this length to, and the fin width, to the number of fins. And so this will be slightly challenging. I'm going to go to Tools and Equations, and I don't have any equations, so I'm going to add an equation. And the equation puts some stuff in there that I don't actually want. And now what I want to set is the number of fins in the linear pattern. So I'm going to click on the linear pattern, and now I want to search around for some of the data associated with that linear pattern. And what we can see is the spacing of the linear pattern is 12.5 millimeters, and the number in the pattern is 11. What I want to do is make the number in this pattern changeable based on this equation. And so by clicking on the 11, I have put D1 at L pattern 1. That would be the dimension, that number 11. I want to be able to compute that. So that number of fins is equal to, let's go back into here, and I want to easily be able to grab the length of this piece, and I'm going to click back in my equation and click on that dimension. It is that total length, and then I'm going to click in here and type the divide sign, and I want to divide by, let's go back to the pattern, my pattern length, and I may have to rotate some to get that, and my pattern length variable is 12.5, so my number of fins is equal to the total length of that arm divided by the width of the pattern. Let's see how that equation looks. I think it's going to need a little tweaking, but I'm going to accept it, and it computed out to 12. Now, did I have 12 teeth in here? No, I had 11. Why did it compute out to 12? I think this thing rounds up. So let me select the equation, edit it, and I'm going to put a -1 here. And I'm going to say OK. Now it computes to 11. I'm going to accept that. And now my number of fins in the pattern will change when I change the length of this. So let me click here. This length is a 150. Let's change it to a 300. It takes a little while. Still taking a little while. Let's zoom out and see how we did. Okay, we now have fins clearly distributed along the length of this thing, and they do not encroach into the curvature. My equations may not be perfect in every situation, and if it turned out it weren't, I would tweak it. But let's bring this back to a different length. Let's try a length of 90. It's going to be fairly short. And let's regenerate. Okay, and I don't believe I could get one more fin in there, so even at a length of 90 I'm getting same size fins everywhere, so this equation is doing exactly what I want. Let me click and change the length back to 150, and this would represent the part that I want. And I am done with it, and so I will probably should have saved it earlier. If I were taking a test in this class making this part, I would be doing a save much more often, just in case I made a bad mistake that I couldn't get at or something went wrong. So what were the various things that I wanted to show you? I showed you some sketcher tools that included the fillet, and it included being able to grab the midpoint of a line and making different relationships. We've shown equations, we've shown linear patterns, we've shown mirrors, and a very important one is to remember that I created the sketch for this fin out on the tip of the part plane, but I didn't actually start the fin until here and extruded it across that thickness, and I used the offset sketch plane option to sketch in one place but start the extrusion somewhere else. That might be important to you in parts later. That'll end this discussion, and so what I will do is for this part produce a drawing that shows you the dimensions, and I'll be asking you to produce this part for homework as part of your homework.